Okay, welcome everybody. I think we can get started. Welcome to the SharePoint PnP Community Call April 2017. I'm Paolo from the core team of Office Dev and SharePoint PnP. So, first of all, what will be the topics of today? We will start with the well-known monthly highlights. So we will see how the PnP project is going so far. Then we will have a quick look at the contributions and the main topics covered by this monthly release. And then we will have three really cool demos from three people from the community. So I think we will really enjoy this call today. First of all, just as a reminder, during the last month almost, we published a few new videos in the YouTube channel of PnP. In early March, we released a video about how to provision SharePoint assets using the SharePoint framework. And on the 13th of March, we also made available a new video about how to access SharePoint from SharePoint framework. Moreover, near the end of March, we released a video about how to programmatically create modern pages in SharePoint Online, which is really, really interesting because whenever you want to do the provisioning of the SharePoint framework stuff, you can use the modern pages provisioning and the extension method that we provide in the core library to do that. As well as on the 27th of March, we also showed you how to play with the JavaScript core library provided by PnP and built by the entire community. Last but not least, just a few days ago, on the 3rd of April, we released a video about the SharePoint framework and organizational considerations. So keep an eye on the videos. They are all about 15-30 minutes in length, and you can find them at akam.ms/spnp-videos. A few numbers about what we did with this community project in the last month, in March 2017. The project is still growing, and we are very happy about this. And as you can see, almost every single number grow in the last 30 days. So we have, for example, a plus 18% of HTTP requests overall, and we reached almost the 2 billions. We are 1.8 billions requests per month. And we also increased the number of unique tenants using PnP. That means that the core library and the PnP.js core and all the stuff we provide as PnP is used by a lot of companies in production, in real tenants, production tenants. And as we are used to do, we also track the numbers from a country perspective. So as you can see, we have the top 5 countries, which are exactly the same as the previous month. So United States, UK, Netherlands, Germany, and Sweden. But from a top countries, based on the number of requests, there are some slightly changing numbers. And because we try to make a kind of a race between all of the countries, it is quite interesting to see that, for example, the Netherlands grow a little bit more than before, or that we have the Germany and the Sweden tenants that are using the PnP stuff much more than before, and we're very happy to see that. More in general, as you can see, PnP is growing, and we are very happy because it is it is all based on a community effort, and so whenever we see these numbers growing, we can be really satisfied of the outcome. So, just to give you an idea, those are the most viewed samples in the PnP repositories. As you can see, we still have the responsive UI, which is really, really often requested, as well as, for example, the provisioning modern console application, which is very used from the community. Moreover, we'll still have some other stuff like, for example, sample about how to create remote event receivers or people picker and stuff like that. They're all growing, and it is really, really nice to see that there are thousands of requests for these kind of samples and pages. Just to remind you, whenever we manage the stuff and the content provided by PnP, we have a core team. I'm a member of the core team together with Patrick, Vesa, Bert, Erwin, Frank, Brian, and many other guys, Radi, and so on and so forth. And we try to do our best with some weekly meetings to define what is the schedule of the PnP project. But we need the help from the community, and that's why we have a couple of bi-weekly meetings, one targeting the SharePoint framework and the JavaScript topics. We call it a special interest group, and we have the next meeting on April the 13th. And we also have a bi-weekly PnP core and PowerShell special interest group, which will be the 19th of April this month, just to keep in touch with the entire community, to collect your feedbacks and to give you answer if you have any question about what we do and what we plan to do with PnP. Of course, we also have the monthly community call like this one. And the next one, the next month, will be the 9th of May, so just after the release, the monthly release of the PnP stuff that will happen in early May next month. But of course, now we are here in this monthly call because we want to cover what has been released in the April 2017 release. So from a SharePoint framework perspective, we released a bunch of new samples. Some of them have been provided by people in the community, some other have been provided by us. And for example, you can find a really nice example about how to use React and the taxonomy picker, or how to provide a modern calendar based on JavaScript in the UI of the SharePoint framework. Or again, you can have an Angular-based Yammer client-side web part, or modern charts based on React, or script editor based on React. And again, we are trying to update all of the samples that we have in the PnP repositories, in the SharePoint organization repositories, in order to target the global available version of SPFX. Because as you know, SPFX has been released just a few weeks ago, and we need to update all of the samples to stay on track. Just to let you know, most of the samples have already been updated, but we are still working on it. So maybe you can find some samples which are still targeting the pre-release of the SPFX. So in case you want to contribute, of course, it is a community project, so feel free to make your pull request and to contribute as well. Or we will try to do our best to update all of the samples as soon as possible. From a more in general PnP perspective, and not only focusing on the SharePoint framework, we also released some new samples, like, for example, the ACM MVC taxonomy sample. And we also have a sample application which allows you to learn how to play with modern pages using the extensions that we provide through the PnP core component. Moreover, from a PnP Partner Pack perspective, we added one interesting capability which allows you to refresh the provisioning of a site based on the original template that you created and that you used to initially provision the site, so that if you, for example, update the template, you can simply refresh the information architecture and the artifacts in an already created site just using a link, a menu item in the site settings page. This is a new capability that we decided to add in order to make it possible for you to refresh just a single site. Before, you were able to update with a batch process all of the sites created using the Partner Pack. But let's say that you want to just update one site, this capability is really, really useful. Then we did also some fine-tuning and some polishing of the project. Moreover, from a guidance perspective, there are a few new articles, like, for example, a really useful one about the SharePoint framework and the governance, as well as we updated all the tutorial articles and the roadmap, so that you can be on track and you can know what is on the schedule from a SharePoint framework perspective. If you want to focus your attention on the core component and on the provisioning engine, well, in April we released, so just a few days ago, just on Friday, to be clear, we made the master merge, and we provided, of course, general overall quality and performance improvements, but we also updated, for example, the JavaScript and the CSS code of the PnP responsive UI to support, to better support navigation elements and some other stuff. We have a new asynchronous method to send email messages using the email utility class. We improved the capabilities of the get unified group calls to have the capability to exclude, for example, the OneDrive URL from the list to speed up the process of getting the list of unified groups that you have, and so on and so forth. And more in general, as I said, we improved, as we are used to do on a monthly basis, we improved the overall quality of the core component. From a core.js perspective, as you can see, we have the new capability, the added new capability of sharing content using the sharing API through the core.js library, as well as there are some fixes for the batch handling and for the concurrency while handling batch requests, as well as some other interesting improvements. From a PowerShell perspective, now we improve the submit PnP search query CMDLet. We have a new sample about how to build a site provisioning solution using PnP PowerShell and Azure Web Jobs, and we updated the MSDN documentation. Of course, we also did some bug fixes, and we moved all the documentation of PnP PowerShell automatically to MSDN, so that whenever we will release any updates on the PowerShell documentation, the MSDN site will be up to date, almost in real time. So, in order to achieve these results, of course, we always have to say a huge, big thank you to all the people in the community that contributed with PnP. There are too many names, so I cannot spend the next 5 minutes reading every single name, but I want to say thank you very much, because the PnP project exists just because of you, just because of the community. So thank you very much for all of your efforts. You rock, guys. And we also have to say a big thank you to all of the companies, all of the partners that around the world allow to their employees to spend time on PnP stuff. This is a list of the companies that allowed us to show their logo and their name in this monthly call. If your company is contributing to PnP and you want to see your logo on this slide deck, feel free to let us know, send us your logo, and we will be more than happy to share this information with the entire community. And again, I want to say thank you to all of these companies that made it possible to increase the quality and the functionalities of the samples and libraries that we provide as PnP. There are also a bunch of people from Microsoft contributing to the PnP project, and especially this month we also have Piotrek and Stefan who contributed, together with all of the other guys that almost on a monthly basis contribute with the entire community. So now, what is in the queue? What is on the table? What we are planning to do in the upcoming weeks from now to the next month? First of all, from a SharePoint framework perspective, we plan to have new samples for different JS libraries available. Moreover, from a provisioning engine, we are working on introducing a new schema which will allow us to provide some new functionalities, and this will be the main topic from the provisioning engine perspective in the next month. Of course, we also introduced a completely new refactoring serialization engine in the provisioning engine, and this new refactored serialization engine will be part of the core component by the next month. From a core component perspective, more in general, we plan to have some improvements and some code quality improvements, as well as from the JS core component. And at the same time, for the PowerShell library, which is mainly based on the core component, and so whenever we will have new capabilities in the core component and in the provisioning engine, we will also be able to benefit of these new capabilities and functionalities in the PowerShell CMDLets as well. The partner pack will continue to evolve. We are also trying to improve and fix the setup wizard, which is really often used now by companies who want to use the PnP partner pack, but we can still improve that component and make it possible using the setup wizard to do an updated setup of the partner pack instead of a fresh new one. And last but not least, of course, we have to and we want to provide new samples related to the SharePoint framework and the SharePoint add-in model more in general. So let me move on, and it's now time to spend about 15 minutes for each of the following demos. We will start with the taxonomy picker for provided hosted add-ins demo made by Alexander von Malakowski. Sorry if I misspelled your name, from Nilsson Group AB. You have about 15 minutes to show us your demo, and thanks for sharing your demo and your time with us, Alexander. So feel free to stall the presentation and get the control and show us your demo. To the React-based taxonomy picker for client-side web part demo by Jose Quinto from Content and Code, and then I'll be back to you, Alexander. Sorry. So, Jose, feel free to get the stage.
Nice to be in the community call. For those who don't know me, my name is Jose Quinto, and I work for a company called Content and Code based in London. So I have been working with React and the SharePoint framework for quite a while, and I'm really happy to be contributing in this SharePoint community. So today what I'm going to show you is a React taxonomy picker control and a web part using this React taxonomy control in the property pane. I decided to split this React taxonomy control in two parts because the taxonomy picker itself is a NPM package you can use in whatever solution. So let's start with the main features having this base taxonomy picker control. It is built using TypeScript, React, and a React Select component, which is is done by the React community. And basically, it gets this as a wrapper and gets all the terms in a given term set. So it also supports single and multiple selection, and it supports large term sets using async mode. That is very, very important because there's sometimes we have large term sets with thousands of terms, and that's pretty useful for that. As I told before, this package is in NPM, so you can install in your solution just type in npm install React taxonomy picker, and you can get it using with typings as well. Let's move on the scenarios that this this control covers. Are mainly three, so using that in the content editor web part or the script editor web part, or using that in the SharePoint framework web part, which is the sample I will going to show you today. I published as well two different projects, one with ECMAScript 6, another with TypeScript, as a sample of how you can use this taxonomy picker control. So let's move on and show you the demo. Let's start with the basic taxonomy picker control. So let's do the first preview on that, just adding using this workbench in the real tenant. So if we click on the plus button and we add the taxonomy picker sample control, we can see how is the base web part we build the with the human template generator, but here we have some languages we can select. So if we click on the configure element, we can see how in the property pane we have the language selector, which is by now just using some mock data with 4 languages: English, Spanish, German, and Italian. So if we click on English, for example, we can see how this control is really reactive. So you can be adding some terms on here, and you can remove the terms as well, just clicking in the cross button besides the name. So In fact, there is another cross button on here, which is intended for remove all of them, which is easier if you want to clear. You can see as well how the selected languages on the web part have the right value selected, German and Italian now, and if we click clear, it's removed by now. That is because there is a communication between the web part itself and the React taxonomy picker. So this is the base, the first preview of the control. Let's go deeper in the code. And firstly, I'd like to show the code using the project for the taxonomy picker itself. So if we go to the taxonomy picker tsx file, we can see that is a React component. It's called taxonomy picker. It extends from React component itself, just providing some properties and states. And basically, I like to focus this demonstration on this feature I told about having two different scenarios in this in this control. The scenario in which you want to load all the terms directly in the control, or you want to load the terms based on the user input. So I would like to explain you how I handle this situation. For example, I use the React life cycle just to load initially some content on here. So for example, the component.mount method allows us to do an initial query. In this case, I did some query to the taxonomy API, getting the term set count. That means initially, before loading the terms, I will be querying the term set just to get in the term set count. Because we have some property in this control, which is called term set count max swap to async. Yeah, it's a long name, but that is intended for be like a threshold variable to allow select one mode or another mode. That means, for example, giving a real sample, if our term set have 50 terms, but the variable on here is, for example, 10, then our control will be async, which means that instead of loading every single term initially, we'll be waiting until the user input. So you can see how I check that that flag on here, and I use the React state just to say, okay, that is async or is not async. If it's not async, just get all the terms on here. In fact, I use some React best practices on here, which is always catching all the errors and putting as a variable in the state, which really helps on defining some kind of method when the thing fails. Cool. So having explained that, let's move on to the other key point I'd like to share with you, and that is about how I handle the load, the SharePoint files loading. So what I mean is, initially, because this component is relying on the sp.taxonomy.js, we need to load some JavaScript files like sp.js or sp.taxonomy.js. So for doing that, I just did some wrapper, and I am now switched to the web part project itself, which is another Visual Studio Code project. And this is a wrapper for just for doing that. So the only thing that does this wrapper is just in the component mount load the sp.json scripts on here. And you can see how I am using this SP loader, Microsoft SP loader. So we have different promises, and in the then we load every single file we need, and after that we can just swap and say, okay, all the scripts have been loaded. Cool. After that, another important key point on here is I am using the spread operator with these dot props just to pass every single property we have in our initial component, which is really helpful in terms of reusability. Cool. So what I'm gonna show you now we have done these 2 key points. I'm gonna show you now a demo in which I show you how you can configure the property pan in the web part. So if we go to the web part directly, we close the controls folder on here, and we go to the web part itself. We can see on the get property pane configuration how we can now configure a property pane taxonomy picker. This taxonomy picker, by default, I did some default options with the English, Spanish, German, and Italian languages, but now we have a term set. So if the control have a valid term set HUID configured on here, then we'll be picking up all the terms. So for example, let's go to our tenant, and we have a language term set on here, and this is the unique identifier. So we are copying that, which basically is the same I have configured on here, but let's uncomment that code, save. Let's allow gulp, just do the steps on here, and refresh our page. If we refresh our page and we click edit again, we can see now how all the terms, all the languages has been loaded. So even we can filter by the right terms on here. That's pretty good. Another key configuration I'd like to show you is about configuring the multi or single selection. So if we click here and put false, and we save, allow gulp to do the configs again, and refresh the page, we can see now how the selector is just single selection, which is pretty nice. And now, the latest demo I'd like to show you is about this feature in which you can convert the control automatically in a sync or sync. So let's say we have in our term set, we have kind of 30 terms. If we set the term set count max swap to async to 10, for example, that means that this is the maximum quantity of terms allowed as an initial load. So now we save, we allow gulp to do the thing on here, and if we refresh the page and we click F12 to see all the queries using the network tab and filter by process. Okay, if we click on edit now, we see that we don't have terms on here, but if we start typing like S or SP, every single time we type, this will be raising a query to the server just to bring these specific items. Cool. So this is mainly, I think that's probably covered the few important points I want to mention you. And just to let you know that this code, the code for this web part is available on GitHub. Please feel free to add any feedback or issues, and I will be happy to help with that. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you very much. Really cool demo and really useful and needed capabilities. So thank you. And thanks also for having the Italian language in the list. So and now it's time for Alexander to do his demo. Hopefully now the technical stuff is all good. So feel free to steal the stage, Alexander, and do your demo, please.
Okay. So, well, basically this is an extension for the regular core taxonomy picker, and the reason I did this because I wanted to have a SharePoint add-in that wasn't relying on an add-in web, basically, so I could call it from different tenants. Because I'm working for two companies and they're both sharing the same applications. So I didn't want to have a hosted or add-in web, basically. For this project, I've used the taxonomy picker, and I basically lifted all the heavy lifting of loading terms and adding terms to my code behind, or my C# code. And for that, I'm using a service. I'm calling it a taxonomy picker service, and it basically contains the methods for retrieving and adding terms. I'm doing this from the view through JavaScript, and I will show you here in the taxonomy picker control. And this is the instead of getting the terms by JavaScript, I'm posting an AJAX call to my controller, asking it to get all the terms initially. For this, I'm using a model, which I have here. Let's see the models. So I have one model that's for querying a term. Basically, when I'm adding a term, I'm using this model for adding it to the term set, and then I do the first call. I'm using this term set query model. And it basically consists of all the components that I need. So I have ID, a name, use keywords, use hashtags, and then I have a language code. And this is basically the same settings used for the regular taxonomy picker. I'm just using it in my model here. So I'm not adding any extra features to the taxonomy picker. I'm just extending them to my CSOM instead. And then here, you can see I'm using, here is the get all the terms, and I'm taking in my model. Then for this specific demo, I'm using app-only client context, because I'm using it on the tenants, and basically to be able to write and read and have app-only permissions. I'm using the app-only context, since the users can't get that the term set by themselves. So here's the, let's see there. Here's the implementation, and basically I'm checking here for all the parameters, or the parameters that are in the model, that are in the usual core taxonomy picker model. Basically, I'm checking if I have a term set ID, or if I'm using, let's see here, a term set by name, or if I'm using the hashtag term set or a keyword term set. And I'm trying to load as little information as possible, so I'm specifying it here. So I don't load, I load only the first level of terms, and if they have children, I will load those children later. And for this method, here I have a method that basically, let's see here, where's that method? Here, this is a method that recursively gets all the terms and returns a picker term model, which you can see here. Basically the same thing that you have in the regular core taxonomy picker. And then if they have children, and if include children are true when you call this method, I will load the children and iterate the same method. And after that, up here in the, or down there, oh, sorry for scrolling so much. I'll basically return the same model that is in the core taxonomy picker, in the taxonomy picker control GS. But in this time, I'm actually loading the entire term set in this model. So we can go to this model, picker term set model. You see now, if I'm typing too fast or speaking too fast, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. No worries.
Yeah. This is basically what you would call the raw term set in the regular taxonomy picker. But I am here. I have the terms. There are of a picker term model, and I have flat terms. And the reason why I'm loading both terms and flat terms is because I want the flat terms are loaded without their children. So I just have a flat structure, and you can see it here. So I will have both the terms and the flat terms from start, which means I won't be populating flat terms in the taxonomy picker control JS. Okay, so here basically what I do is I set, when I get to success, I set the raw term set to the model that was returned, which was my picker term set model. And here I'm just setting the flat terms to the flat terms. Okay, so let's go to here. This is showing 3 or 4 different kinds of taxonomy picker. The first one is just the regular one. We can do this. Just debug here. Reload the page. Okay, so here is my returned picker term set model in the JSON format, and I just set that to be the raw term set. Oops, sorry. I'll do that again. There it comes. So now my raw term set looks like this. And that's basically how it looks when it's returned by JSON, also the other one, for the regular one. And you can see here I have an array of 37 terms. And you can see all the other information that's needed to initialize the picker. And then I have the terms, and the terms here are loaded with their children. So you can see here, first term here, and it has an array of terms here, while as the flat terms, they don't have any terms. They're just empty array. I've also implemented another thing called filter term. Before, in the regular taxonomy picker, there's a filter term ID, and you use that to filter what terms to show up for suggestions. But I'm instead picking, also getting that term, and I have a new method called get child term collection by path, which is basically I'm finding the term and returning it to the filter term, so I can set that those terms are the terms that are to be populated in the dialog for the picker. I'm just showing you here. So here, these are the ones shown from the term set, the terms rather. While as when you type here, these are the ones that are in the flat term structure. Okay, am I going too fast?
No, I think it's okay.
Okay. Basically, it's like the other taxonomy picker, but I'm using a controller to populate my picker term set. Also, for this sample, I built a custom editor control. So instead of building the entire control from the input, I'm using editor template that builds around the ID of the property name or the property name, and then using that as the ID. So if my property is called demo, then the input, which stores all the values, will be called demo, and then all the other controls around it would have corresponding names to that ID. So I can show you here. This is my editor templates, and basically I'm building the entire structure for the picker here instead of in the JavaScript. And because I'm using this instead of building it in JavaScript, I can also do this. I can use just the regular HTML editor for. So I don't have extra HTML in my view. Also, to be able to reference this in my model or in my view model, I'm using a U hint saying use taxonomy picker, and that's the exact name of the one. So it will use that one as editor 4. I've implemented some features that I thought was missing or not implemented in the taxonomy picker before, and that's basically when using cascading taxonomy picker. So this one is a cascading taxonomy picker, and in the app.js, you can see here, I am implementing it here. So here's the first taxonomy picker in the cascading, and I'm specifying levels to show in terms. And that I don't think was it was implemented in the suggestions, but it wasn't implemented in the dialogue. And also here, I've implemented it for the children, meaning that you will only see the level that you specified for your cascading pickers, meaning that for here, for example, this is the first level. I'm telling it to show only one level. So basically here, I have in this is the full term set, and here I want to show only the first level. So here I show only the first level without its children, and there's no expand buttons or everything. So I can pick here from the ones that are in the first level. So here I pick Sweden, for instance, and that will initiate the second cascading. And that one I have told to show level of terms 2. So here I can only see the terms that are from that level, which has always been working for the regular suggestions, which is I type here. Let's see. Okay.
Sorry for being awkward, Alexander, but you should try to close up as soon as you can, because we need that to move to the other demo. But so far, so good. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just basically I pick one here, and then that will initiate the other one, and then I pick that. Also, I implemented functionality for that. When I change the parent, the children will also change. So if I pick Finland here, all the children will be cleared. And they will also have a new population here based on the term I picked before. And that will also be if I pick here. Let's see, here's initiated. if I change this one, so if I change this one to Vasa. I hope I haven't offended any Finnish people. I am not that good at geography. You see here, then it will also be Vasa here.
Okay.
So that's basically the demo finished.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. It's now time for Jeremy Coleman from PC Professional to provide us a demo about how he implemented a client-side web part for adding a chart and a calendar. And thank you again, Alexander, for your demo. Really needed, because right now we are all focused on SharePoint framework, but the SharePoint edit model is still there. We can still use it, and very often it is really very useful to have such kind of capabilities. So thank you.
Hi, Paolo. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Jeremy. Feel free to get the stage.
Yeah, so I'll go pretty quickly. These are both pretty basic demonstrations, but they kind of share some core code. So I'll just go over that first. The calendar was my first attempt at creating a SharePoint framework web part. And my focus was really to just display SharePoint data, as a lot of our clients store a lot of data and lists and various SharePoint libraries that they want to visualize, whether it's in charts or in a calendar or some kind of dashboard. So I started off with the calendar just because it seemed like it'd be an easy attempt at what probably many already do in creating JavaScript web parts, but just embedding them through more classical means. So here I'm using the calendar.js library, and the common components between both of these web parts are the field pickers and the ability to parse the lists and libraries from any SharePoint site that is in your tenant. So the default is the current site, and I've created a demo calendar list. So that's selected here, but you could enter any site URL. So if you wanted to pull data from a different site collection or from a sub-site, you can specify that here, and you just enter it in the path in, and it'll update the list available, and then you can select a list from that site. So with the calendar, you need to define a couple fields, the start and end time, of course, and these are pulling from the list columns. So it has two separate lookups that I'll show you, and it parses those fields at the time you select the list. You can use any valid field for any of these options. So I'm going to select the most obvious ones with the calendar. And didn't seem to like that. Let's try reloading. May have had the page open too long. So here it rendered, and it's pulling the data that's available from that calendar. Let's see. So this is the list that it's using. There's only 3 events available in it, but you'll see the same events here that are on the calendar web part. And you can click one. It's using the Suite Alert library for this display. Just to this was more practice for me at implementing the various libraries with JavaScript. And so I'll show basically what I'm doing here. I'm using most of the property pane options, drop downs, text input, importing a calendar template here, which is just a predefined template, as well as the themes that are available through the jQuery UI, and applying it to the calendar. So when the page loads, a couple of these properties here are going to define the options that are available in the property panes. And by default, they're they're available if you've got a list selected, if you've got a site selected. Otherwise, it disables those property pane options. So when the property pane loads, it's looking at those variables and determining whether or not they're enabled. So I'll show real quick the props here. So in each calendar that's displayed, each of the drop downs is applied to one of the properties. Because I'm not using React here, they're just static properties. But I think it's pretty straightforward. It's looking up every time a property is changed, whether or not what's selected has a list available. If it does, it's going to get the list titles. If it has a list selected, then it pulls the list columns, and those functions are defined here. Sorry, at the bottom. So these are all just the methods to pull the lists, as well as the list data and the available list columns, and to get the current site and the lists, and then of course to render the list itself into the calendar web part. So with that, I'll move on to the chart, because the chart was really my next attempt at rendering SharePoint data and visualizing it. So I learned a lot by creating the calendar web part that I was able to apply here. So the chart is just a basic chart using chart.js and SharePoint list data to render it. So if we open the property pane, you can see there's quite a bit more to it than the calendar. I didn't use the built-in templates for the look and feel. Rather, I used a generator to create random colors within a color set. So you can kind of go through that until you find one you like, rather than having static definitions. And here you'll see that a lot of the properties here mirror the calendar, which site, which list we're going to use for the data source, the column, the data column, so the column we're going to do our function on, which column identifies the item as a unique item, and what operation you want to do to the data. So in this case, I'm using the current site URL for the lookup. But if I look at another site, if I define a custom path, you'll see that now I can pull data from the root site, which is here. There we go. So you'll see the lists available here mirror the options available. So even though it's in a different site collection, it's able to pull that data. So if I looked at, say, the let's see here, task tracking, I'll get a list of options available. But for now, I'll just put it back to the current site. And here I've got another demo data source sample data list where I've got a couple columns and a few rows of data. So in this case, I'm using the label column as the product order quantity for the data column, and the unique identifier as the product, and I'm performing a sum. But if this is where I think it becomes a little more useful. It's going to render a couple of different React components defined by the number of charts that you specify, and then the number of max list items that can be parsed by any of the chart configurations. So now dynamically we've got 2 available configurations. Actually, we should have 3. And for each one, you can define the different type of chart you want, what size you want it to be. Change this one to a bar chart. It should be the 3rd in the list here. I'll set the second chart as well to a different chart type, as well as change it to a medium. And then it's using the Office UI to render the chart components. So the fabric components. So here I can change the list source for each and go through the various options. By default, it's going to display some sample data just based on shipping. So I'll go to the code here, and firstly, the charts are based on a couple different properties. So each chart that we define here is going to be an array of this object type here, the chart props. So I thought that was a little interesting when working with it, because it allowed me to render multiple charts without really having to handle each one differently. So in this case, when we set the number of charts to more than 1, the charts, the React component here is just going to take a look at the number of charts, at the configuration, and map it to the corresponding chart type. So I've defined each of the chart.js charts here, and then it returns the React component that is needed for that chart, as well as the chart options that have been defined in the properties. The functions that calculate the data are pretty simple right now. I didn't try to get too fancy with it. It's just some basic operations, the sum of the data, the average, or you can get a count of all the unique objects within the list that you define, and then it returns whatever that calculation is.
And sorry, Jeremy, but we need to close up pretty soon because we are running out of time. I'm sorry. Being the last demo of the monthly call makes you kind of unlucky. I'm sorry, but if you can close
that's
up.
Okay. I think I got through most of it. Yeah, it's that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward demo. It's just using SharePoint list data, which for me is key because our client requirements often include the need to visualize, especially in a modern page, the ability to visualize data or display it in a way that's a little more dynamic than what's available now. So that was my focus with these web parts.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. That's really needed, and thank you for sharing your time and your knowledge with us, and for sharing your efforts. So thank you, thank you for this demo. And let me come back to the slide deck just for a while, and just to say thank you to everybody to attend this monthly call. We had great demos today, as every monthly call. Keep in mind the URLs of the PnP project, and stay tuned and let us know your feedbacks using GitHub or the Microsoft technical communities so that we can stay in touch. Thank you everybody.